Welcome everyone to Wager Talk Extra Golf Edition. I am Andy Lang from WagerTalk.com, being joined by the hottest golf handicapper on the planet. He's good looking and I mean hot by good looking, and your picks are incredible. Nick Borrman. All of our plays can be found at wagertalk.com. Nick already has his pack up. If you don't have his pack now, I really don't know what you're doing. My pack is up as well. But Nick, Lucas effing Glover, incredible. Yet another outright winner for you. Congratulations. You talked about it on the show last week, how the odds were completely out of whack. Congratulations, man. So again, please tell us how you came to pick Lucas Glover, because it was an incredible call.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. It felt good. Cash another 100-1. Anytime you can do that and get the long shots, it always feels good. It was 2 weeks ago, not last week, but 2 weeks ago. Everybody was all over Lucas Glover. He had, and you even mentioned him as far as a betting note in our show of, he was the only player in the field. I forget the event. It was a 3M coming into 3M where he finished in the top 6 in 3 straight events going into that event. Right, so he was hot, and everybody was talking about it. He was 50-1 around that number to win that event. I bet on him. I thought he was playing well. I thought the number was pretty good, and the trend was there. He was playing well. His approach has been strong. And finally, if you were just looking into anything or watching any golf, they kept talking about his putting and how good his putter had been. And finally, it was back, and it had been missing for a long time. He had switched putters, blah blah blah. So I'm like, okay, it all adds up. Let's go with it. Miscut. Okay, then 1 week goes by. His odds double. You're talking about a guy that was playing very well. Miscuts in the PGA Tour are such an anomaly. Like, I don't want to say an anomaly, but they're overreacted to just way too much. One miscut, guy's odds shouldn't go from 50 to 100-1. So I don't know, honestly. If he was at 50-1 again, I probably wouldn't have bet him. But because his number doubled, I'm like, this is just dumb. I mean, I have to it's just too good of a number not to bet. If I was betting him at 50-1 1 week ago, why the hell wouldn't I bet him at 100-1 in literally the same field? So that was the rationale behind it. I liked him a week ago. There's no reason. 1 week was not enough for me to get off Lucas Glover, and thank God I didn't, because it paid out big time. But it was current form, man. He was playing well, and why not?
Yeah, you're right. A miscut can happen just anywhere. I mean, the best players in the world, Mr. Rory misses the cut every once in a while. He's a top
Yeah.
10 machine, but he just has a bad week. And yeah, you're right. The overreaction on the books worked well to your advantage. So congratulations on that. Okay, so we are at the FedEx St. Jude this week. Nick and I's golf packages are up on wagertalk.com. This is the first event of the playoffs. Before we get into the course overview, real quick, Nick, this is a smaller field, and we're down to 70 guys. So can you give just a little explanation of the playoffs and the field and how this week's tournament works?
Sure. For the first time, the FedEx St. Jude, as the first playoff event, is only 70 players. And of course, if you're watching any golf last week, you knew that already. I mean, JT was the big story. Terrible all year. Ended up missing it by one shot getting in. So it's top 70. Last year it was top 125, which then had a cut. So this top 70 will not have a cut. After this event, 20 are eliminated. Top 50 qualify for next week's BMW Championship. And then again, as always, top 30 for that final tour championship with starting strokes still in play. So a little different. This is kind of I think this is going to give a feel of what they're planning next year with these no-cut designated events in smaller fields. That's basically what we have going on right here this week. So I guess if we'll get a taste this week if we're going to like how some of these bigger tournaments are going to play next week. But that's the gist of the playoffs. Pretty easy to follow. 70, 50, 30, no cuts anytime.
Yeah, so the no cut is a big one. You're going to get 4 rounds out of all your golfers. So these head to head matchups
Yeah.
are absolutely going to make it through to Sunday. So let's talk about the course. We are at TPC Southwind. This course is par 70, only 2 par 5s. So you got to score on the par 4s and the par 3s. That's going to be essential for whoever ends up being the outright winner. A lot of water hazards, and the heat in Memphis is going to be scorching. It looks like the heat index is going to be over 100 degrees for Saturday and Sunday, and possibly even Friday. There are some scattered thunderstorms in the area just to add to the humidity. So this is going to be a tough one. You may not be able to see it on TV. Like, if it's windy, we can see it's windy, but the heat is going to be really, really something. So getting all 4 rounds in this heat. This is really going to test the guys, their stamina and their cardio. So I have to say, absolutely terrible job by TPC Southwind. No videos out there of their hole by hole. I mean, just it really embarrassing. I ended up having to use these cartoon pictures. So if you find something better, let me know. But I did a lot of research yesterday, and this is the absolute best I can come. Look at that. That's just awful. Let's go. Let's go through a couple holes that I think are pretty good. This is the third hole, par five, 554 yards. Um, there's water on the right side, and you see it's a pretty hard landing spot in the fairway. So if you hit a good drive, players are going to have a chance to go for the green in two. But if you fade it to the right, it's most certainly going to be wet. If you miss the fairway off the drive, it's going to be probably a layup, which actually may be a good thing for some guys. Sometimes it's easier if the decision gets taken away from you. But with only two par fives on this course, you got to be aggressive on the par five. So do not expect guys that are outside of the top 50 in points to be laying up on this hole. Those guys need to move forward. So this should be a fun, exciting hole, third hole to start off the tournament. Hole 14 is a brutal par three, 239 yards. Getting par, great score here. Like if you play all four rounds and you score even par across four rounds on this hole, congratulations. That's a good one. It's an elevated tee. You got water to the right. You got a bunker that's long and to the left. And the green that you can't see on the cartoon has plenty of ridges and just, kind of mounds and undulations. Putts are difficult. So if you don't dial in this long iron shot, a two putt is absolutely no guarantee. So, like I said, par over four rounds at this hole is going to be, they'll be very, very happy with that. And finally, we have to go over the 18th hole, par four, 453 yards. Just an amazing closing hole. Huge dog leg to the left, all kinds of water on the left side. If you drive it to the left, you're in the water. If you drive it to the right, it's going to run through the fairway and it's going to be in the rough, maybe behind the trees. That approach shot is so tricky because the water is right on the edge on the left. So you're going to see guys kind of lay up sometimes, even if even if they have a chance to go for the green. If they're in the rough, they're going to lay it up just a little bit short. You're going to see a lot of balls out to the right side. So it's just a great closing hole, especially if you've got several guys up near the top for the lead. It really can mess with you when guys are standing on the tee looking at that smaller fairway with that water. It's a great finishing hole. So I would say one of the better finishing holes on tour. So that is TPC Southwind. Nick, I don't know if you have anything else to add to this course, but should set up for a really good tournament this week.
No, I mean, one thing I would just mention is that this is a small green course. They're averaging only 4,300 square feet. Typically, you're seeing courses in the 5,500 range on average. So this is pretty small. Pebble Beach, to put it in perspective, is the smallest on tour at 3,500. So it's not too much bigger than that. So if you go back to looking at the last couple of winners, it's ball strikers. I mean, when you have small greens, it puts a bigger emphasis on hitting the greens, and it kind of takes away, I guess, the guys that don't putt well, your Rorys and your Schefflers. It kind of levels the playing field for them because they struggle when you're hitting 50, 60 feet away and they're not necessarily three putting. So it does help those type of players. And the truth is there. If you look at the last results over the last six winners, four of them led the events in strokes gained tee to green. And Will Zalatoris is a perfect example of last year. Excellent ball striker, not a putter, and was able to win. So just pay attention to that this week. It's going to be I think, a ball striker type of a course. But that's all I got for you.
Well, let's jump to this total strokes gained chart. This is really the crux of where Nick and I start our handicapping. So let's take a look. This is the total strokes gained. Nick, this chart has been the gospel for you this year. this is where a lot of the outright winners come from. So what'd you find on the chart? Anything that jumps out to you, and give us a little explanation of it?
Well, I have a feeling this chart is going to be rinsed and repeated for each of the next 3 weeks. So I'll say that first. But no real surprise here. For the first time that I've done this all season, I think, though, Scotty Scheffler has been dethroned as the top dog over the last 12 months. That's a running 12 months from this tournament date going back to, I guess, last year's FedEx St. Jude. But obviously still strong in leads over the last 6 months and 3 months. And again, maybe this week, because of the smaller greens, his putting, crappy putting won't be as much of an issue for him. We'll see. Rory's kind of on that same boat. He's been playing excellent, and he's been struggling. If he's making putts, he's winning a lot of these events too. So he's been playing very well. And then you got guys like Tony Finau trending the wrong way. I always like to look at hopefully the consistent pattern you see over the last year, 6 months, and 3 months. Sometimes there's a little spike, but Tony Finau is clearly going the wrong way. And then you got guys like Wyndham Clark, who've just turned it on this year and was really not much of a name at all last year. So that makes sense. And his trend, and Tommy Fleetwood, just been very, very steady. Of course, we know he's not going to win because he's Tommy Fleetwood, but he's probably good for a top 10 or a top 20, and he's been playing excellent. And of course, I had to throw our buddy in there, Brian Harman. He's a top 10 in the world ranked golfer now. I had no idea that happened after he won the Open Championship. But there he is, Brian Harman, 9th in the world and playing well over the last 3 months. Clearly, probably a little overvalued now. But that's the list, Andy. And like I said, I think we'll be looking at this same list the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to move to players that can trip you up, and you already mentioned a couple of them. I got to start with the big dog, Scotty Scheffler. I mean, you mentioned it. Highest priced golfer in the field is minus 0.47 strokes gained putting the last 3 months. It's unbelievable how bad he is at putting. And it caught up to him finally at the Open Championship. He barely made the cut. He was on the right side by one shot. And he had an amazing last round where he went out and played in the better weather. That's the only reason he got up to 23rd. He has not finished better than 14th at this course the last 3 times playing it. Man, having him as a top priced golfer, it seems like a real stretch. I mean, I get it. I don't know if I want to bet against him, but I'm certainly not betting on him when he's been piecing together his game. I don't want to say lucky, but this putting issue is just really, really has not caught up to him all year except for the Open Championship. I wonder if this is maybe a bad time of year where the putting just really causes him some issues. I'm going to be betting on guys who are much better with the putter. So I know this is a ball striker's course and tee to green, but if you're missing these 5 and 6 foot putts that he consistently does, takes away birdie opportunities, and there's not going to be as many birdie opportunities at this course as we've seen some of the easier courses. So Scotty Scheffler is my first player that can trip you up. I want no part of the most expensive guy in the field. I'm also going to go with Victor Hovland. On paper, I know Hovland looks like a good pick, but after his win at the Memorial, this guy's finished 19th, 29th, 25th, 13th. Again, it all comes down to putting and around the green with Hovland. It continues to be the weak part of his game. He has no finishes inside the top 20 on this course, and he's priced as a top 5 player. I just think that's a real stretch. I think he's going to disappoint this week over 4 rounds. I think that around the green and putting is going to cause him some problems, and he just hasn't played up to nearly as good as he did when he won at the Memorial. And we have a 4 tournament sample size showing that. So Victor Hovland, I'm probably going to stay away from. He's just too overpriced. And you mentioned Brian Harman. Nick, he's like the complete opposite of Scotty Scheffler. His putting is too good. I just don't think it continues. The last 2 months, he's plus 1.38 strokes gained putting. Best in the field, like by far, like not even close. But he's extremely short off the tee. And this course, I think, can give him trouble because he's gotten away with the putting on some of the courses where you didn't have to be a bomber. This one, you're going to have to take advantage of some longer holes. They've got several par 4s that are over 450 yards. This is also Brian Harman's first tournament since winning the Open Championship. His stock is never going to be higher. Like you said, top 10 golfer. Brian Harman, top 10 golfer. So I also want to read this to you, Nick. This is going to shock a lot of people. So he's priced as the 18th best golfer this week. Okay, first, 12th, 9th, and 2nd, the previous 4 tournaments. That's incredible, right? Let me read you his finishes before that. 43rd, miscut, 29th, miscut. There's a 7th. Miscut, 44th, miscut, 42nd, miscut, 32nd. Does that sound like a top 10 golfer in the world to you?
What's your point, Andy?
My point is, if he regresses back to that Brian Harman, he's going to be a massive, massive disappointment. No doubt his putter, you could also throw JT Poston in there, that JT Poston's putting is just through the roof. And we're going to see both those guys. Listen, if he continues to putt like that, more power to him. He's going to do some damage in this playoff run. I just don't think it's going to last for all 3 tournaments. So I will take him as a player that can trip you up this week. So. All right, Nick, let's go to an outright. This has been obviously your bread and butter. Who do you have circled this week that you have your eye on as an outright winner?
So, Andy, unfortunately, it's not as sexy as last week. There's probably not many in the field at 100 to 1 in a 70-person field with no cut that are actually going to win this thing. But I haven't bet Colin Morikawa in probably a year. But I feel like things are starting to kind of go his way. And he does seem to have a little bit of resurgence. And we know he's been just, not a guy to bet on recently. But I'm hoping, as I mentioned earlier, with the smaller greens, averaging less than 4,500 square feet, that's going to minimize his weakness, which is, of course, his putting. So I'm hoping that will help him and accentuate his TV green game, which we know when he's hitting the ball well, he is one of the best in the world. He did miss the cut at the Open Championship, but that was a rare poor week with his iron. So here's a couple numbers I want to throw you at you just to talk about how good his ball striking is. That was the second time dating back over a year to last year's Open Championship that he's lost strokes on approach. Only the second time in a year. Pretty dang impressive. He's lost strokes off the tee just 3 times over that period. And if you combine approach and off the tee, that's ball striking, 1 time in over a year has he actually lost ball striking. And that was going back to last year's Scottish Open. That's 26 tournaments. He's only done it once. So it just proves how consistent he is in getting to the green. And I think, again, with the smaller greens, that could help him this week. Just a couple of shots here and there over the course of 4 days, be a little better than everybody else. And again, will he make the putts? I don't know. But 25 to 1, I think, is a decent price in this field. I think he could be shorter than that. Morikawa, he finished tied for 14th at the U.S. Open. And then, of course, he was that close. He had a great finishing round on Sunday at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Got into the playoff with Ricky Fowler. Thank God he didn't win because I had Ricky Fowler in that, and I was definitely rooting against Morikawa. But it did just provide me with a little confidence in what he's been doing. He's also finished no worse than tied for 26 here in 3 starts, including a tie for 5th last year. So at least he knows the venue pretty well. But I haven't been on him in a while, Andy. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, it's time, Colin. Do me right and give me a chance on Sunday.
It's such a big name, big time skill, and he's definitely not on people's radars. You don't hear people talking
Yeah.
about him, so great spot to grab him at a great number. So take a look at Colin Morikawa there. Let's do DraftKings darlings here. We had another great week with DraftKings. Why? Because we keep riding the same guys, Nick. Rinse and repeat with Eric Cole.
Yep.
Guys, 6,900. If you're playing DFS golf and you don't have Eric Cole in your lineup, then I have failed you. I have just failed as a as a personality on this show. This guy he's the DFS MVP. He finished 14th last week. He continues to be underpriced. He gets us every weekend point possible. We don't even have to worry about him making the cut. But at 6,900, gotta be in your lineup here. So he's just he's playing really good. He's under the radar. Obviously, DraftKings has not figured out because he would be way up there on the price. But I'm grateful. Eric Cole at 6,900. I mentioned JT Poston and how his putting is due to regress. I'm going to try and ride him one more week just because of the price at 7,300. I'm not sure this is a great course for him, but 4 top 7 finishes in 4 out of the last 5 weeks at this price. I just think he's worth a stab. And he finished 20th here last year. So if we get a 20th place finish out of JT Poston at 7,300, this is a steal. So I'll roll one more week. I don't think it's going to last very much longer because Poston's been getting it done on some easy courses, but we'll take a stab with him. And Steven Yeager, 7,300. This is another guy that we just keep riding. He's been a cash cow. He's finished 9th, 13th, 34th, 30th, and 14th the last 5 tournaments, another 7,300 price golfer. So those are 3 guys that we know we're going to get 4 rounds of, very underpriced, who are playing really good golf. And my free article, digital download, is up on my player profile page at WagerTalk.com. That's got the rest of my lineup in there. It's got the course breakdown, a couple of other stats, and betting notes. So if you want to take a look at that, it gives you the rest of my lineup. It's free. Just go to my player profile page and download that. All right, Nick, we're looking at a finishing position. This name, I got to tell you, surprised me. Let's talk Cameron Young. What do you like about him this week?
I feel like this is the week of taking guys that I haven't bet in a long, long time and just saying, screw it, let's see what happens. I'm riding a good heater, maybe something will be good. But Cameron Young, I haven't bet him. That's all I can really say. He just hasn't been good since the Masters. Andy, one finish, or excuse me, he hadn't finished inside the top 30 in 7 straight events. So what does he do? He needs to get something going, right? So he enters the John Deere Classic, and there's no way he plays that event if he's playing well and had any sort of, I guess, confidence going in. But he had to do what he had to do, and he ended up playing pretty well. Finished tied for 6. He had the early lead, and it looked like he might run away with the thing. But as we've seen him do, he just can't quite close the deal. So still a strong finish. But then he did piggyback that with his next start at the Open Championship. So it seemed to work for him as far as giving him a little bit of confidence. Of course, then missed the cut at the 3M Open. But I like this venue as another good spot for him. You mentioned Harman and maybe avoiding Harman because of his short length. Well, there's nobody longer than Cameron Young, other than I guess you could say Rory. But Cameron Young is just an absolute bomber, and if that gives him a few extra shorter clubs into some of these longer holes. So there's 8 par 4s that are over 450 yards this week, so that could help him hit just a club or two less than everybody else. But if you go back before that little funk from the Masters, I mean, this guy, he's the rookie of the year last year. He had, if you go back to last year and the first half still of this year, so it wasn't until the Masters that he kind of fell off. He had 12 of 17 starts where he finished in the top 25, including 7 top 10s. He had all those runners up at the majors last year. So I fully believe that his funk was always going to be short-lived, and I think I'm seeing enough signs, just like Morikawa, that maybe the end has happened, and it's only going to get better from here. So I'm trying to take advantage of prices on these guys before they consistently start playing well and finishing top 10 again, and then the prices go away. So you can get them at 40 to 1 on the outright market. Top 10 plus 350, top 20 plus 130, I think are pretty good numbers in this field. So I like his length this week. I think he's trending in the right direction, and I'm trying to take advantage of a number that probably isn't going to be around too much longer if he continues to play well.
You're really, really loving these guys that struggle with putting this week. Hey, hey, who am I to argue, man?
Yeah.
Nick, one more time. Tell everyone how many outrights you've picked and where we can find you at what you have up for this tournament.
That would be 11 outright winners this season. That dates back to September. So it's basically 1 per month, and it's been a good run, especially over the last month and a half. 4 of the last 6 we've hit, including 2 over 100. So it's been a great season, up over 160 units on the season. And right now I do have this week's pack up, and you can get a full year of golf. So screw buying this week's pack. It's $19, but full year of golf, half price right now, Andy, $199. I don't know if you trust I can do it again. I know I can do it again, or at least maybe I won't get as many 100-to-1 winners, but I know I can find some winners for us over the course of the next year. And it's as good of a value as it's going to be. It'll be available through this weekend, and then that goes away. So take advantage of that now while you can.
Before you logged in, I was talking to our producer, and I was like, I've never seen anybody pick this many outright winners like in a 12-month span. I've never seen it. Like maybe if you throw like 15 or 10 golfers every week, you could do it, but I've never seen anybody do it. This is I think you're underselling yourself. This is a legendary year of golf handicapping, Nick. Come on. I think you're underselling it. So congratulations to you. That's it's been really, really fun to watch. So all right, let's get into once again, we said we'd do some 3-ball action. And my genius said, Justin Thomas isn't going to play good. Let's do a 3-ball against him. Guess what? I cashed by 1 shot. Adam Scott did beat Justin Thomas last week to cash that one. So if I'm looking at the 3 balls this weekend, there is one that jumps out to me, and it's a 3-ball that includes Tommy Fleetwood, Max Homa, and Matthew Fitzpatrick. Matthew Fitzpatrick has incredible course history here. He's just been a letdown this year, man. It just has not clicked for him this year. It's just not been a great year for him. So Fleetwood in so much better form than Matthew Fitzpatrick. And Max Homa, this is just not really a course that sets up that well for him. This is, he's famous for being really, really good in California. He's playing okay. But if I'm eliminating Matthew Fitzpatrick just because of just his current form, that gets me down to Tommy Fleetwood and Max Homa, and I get Tommy Fleetwood at plus 165. Absolutely. I think that's worth a sprinkle on that 3-ball. Tommy Fleetwood plus 165 over Max Homa and Matthew Fitzpatrick. Normally what I do is I take 2 guys at plus money. I don't think I need 2 guys. I think I'm just going to roll with Fleetwood. I don't have a cut to worry about. It's just 4 rounds of golf in a short field, and I want the guy that's playing the best right now, and it is Tommy Fleetwood. So Fleetwood plus 165 over Homa and Fitzpatrick is the three ball that I noticed. And then I know you talked about the finishing position earlier. When you're logging in and looking at these finishing positions, you're noticing that they're very juicy. Well, there's only 70 guys. So, is there anybody else that kind of sticks out for you with these finishing positions? I know you got to pay some juice, but on the short field, there's probably some value somewhere.
Yeah, you took my thunder there. Fleetwood is definitely one. He's as high as plus 250 for a top 10, and he's minus 110 basically as a top 20. And you mentioned the 4 rounds guaranteed. Well, Fleetwood's kind of, I don't know, his if you just look at any tournament, he's like, okay, 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 and then one of the 4 rounds he just shoots 62, right? So that usually, as long as
So
he's
true.
guaranteed 4 rounds, as long as he's guaranteed 4 rounds, that's going to be enough to get him in maybe that top 10 or top 20. So I do like him this week. The other one I'm looking a little further down. It's a resurgence of Ben On. Tied for third at the Scottish Open, tied for 23rd at the Open, and then tied for second last week at the Wyndham. And he's just hitting the ball well again off the tee. He's been off the charts. He's gained strokes off the tee and looks like a dozen, maybe 13 straight events. His approach game is pretty strong. He's just kind of his around the green game has actually been very, very good as well. He's kind of a 5-player guy, doesn't do anything exceptionally well, but does enough of everything that he's being in contention. And you look at his recent results, he's definitely resurging. So right now you can get Ben on at over 4-1 on a top 10, which I think is a little bit aggressive in this field, but you can get him at close to plus 175 as a top 20, and I think that's very doable. So I like Ben on as a longer shot, I guess, if you will, on the finish position.
Not only do I agree with Ben On, I put him in my fantasy lineup last week.
Ah,
I noticed
nice.
kind of the same thing. It was like, oh, something's happening here with Ben On. His numbers are starting to point towards the right direction. I would
Yep.
also say that in this short field, you got some pretty good parlay pieces. You guys know I love my cross sport parlays. The one I'm looking at is Ricky Fowler. On DraftKings, they've added the top 30 finishing positions. So now that's DraftKings and FanDuel that you can play top 30. So I think it's okay if kind of start using that category since it's on multiple books. They have Ricky Fowler minus 225 to finish in the top 30. This isn't a huge
Okay.
field. So I think you could put that with something else. So that was one that jumped out. But yeah, Ben On, absolutely great call on that one, Nick. So all right, guys, that's going to do it for us for the first playoff tournament for the 2023 PGA season. That is Nick Borrman. All of his plays and outright winners can be found at wagertalk.com. 11 outright winners in this season. Hoping we can get another one to squeeze another
Yes.
one in. Give us 12 so we can say you average one a month. That would be
That's the
absolutely
goal.
amazing. So, my measly golf plays can be found at wagertalk.com. So, looking forward for both of us to have a profitable week. We're down to 70 players, guys. Only a couple tournaments left. Don't forget to grab Nick Borman's year-long pack for golf. He's got a special for it. Go to Nick Borman's profile page on wagertalk.com. Let's have a profitable tournament. Good luck, and we will see everyone next week.